Hello class, welcome back. Today we'll be doing something a little different than what we normally do. I'm going to be rating anime scientists. Now there's a bunch of ways that we can operationalize what makes a good or a bad scientist. We could talk about how ethical their research is, we could talk about whether their work is reproducible, we could talk about if how they conduct their research is a realistic reflection of how academia operates in the real world, and we can talk about, of course, how closely they actually stick to the scientific method. But let's be real, none of that really matters. You're not going to get tenure by participating in a semi-realistic portrayal of the existential terror that is the peer review process. Nah, you gotta publish. So today, we're ranking 16 anime scientists on how publishable their work is. Let me show you our tiers. Now, you might notice that I've snuck ethics into this. See, when you submit a manuscript into a scientific journal, at least in my field, you have to demonstrate that you've gotten it approved by your institution's IRB. They're the ones who make sure that your study's ethical. If they haven't approved it, bam, do not pass go, do not pay $2,000 for your paper to be open access. You're not even getting to peer review. So, here are our ranks. S, that's the good stuff. Good quality research that seems to follow the scientific method, meets ethical standards, and would pass the critical eyes of your peers. These people are going places. A, okay, that's an alright paper, your sample size is low, or you don't have any actual data, but you're IRB approved and you can actually get that published somewhere. It's not going to be a top tier journal, but it's not going to turn any heads, but you can add that to your CV. B, sure, you didn't hurt anyone, but there's no scientific merit to your work. Maybe you can get away with presenting it at a conference if the reviewers don't really care all that much? C, oops, you didn't get IRB approval. Maybe the benefits of your work don't outweigh the risks, or maybe you're just breaching anonymity. Either way, you're not getting published, but at least no one's dead? D, someone's dead. F, that's just mass murder in a lab coat. And finally, E, the engineer tier of shame. People say these characters are scientists, but I know the truth. How dare they? Okay, now that that's established, let's get rolling. I've got our tiers set up top and our aspiring anime scientists below. Starting with Shou Tucker from Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. D. No IRB would ever approve that stuff. He may not have killed Nina, his wife, and his dog directly, but they are still very much dead. You bet your butt this man didn't get informed consent from his participants, and the risks to their health, both physical and mental, definitely outweigh the benefits of, look, this chimera can talk. Shou Tucker, your H index will forever remain at 0, just like your score on your city training quizzes. Alright, Senku Ishigami from Dr. Stone. C. Okay, look, let me explain. First of all, I'm rating him on his original work, not his replications. A lot of the science we see him do in the manga and anime is just replicating effects and reactions other researchers have found in the past. Replications are super important, don't get me wrong, but they're pretty hard to publish. So let's talk about his work reviving petrified people and figuring out how the petrification process works and how you can use it. His work's pretty great. He keeps good notes, it's replicable, and he has a pretty huge sample size. The benefits of unpetrifying a person also super outweigh the risks. It should be a slam dunk, right? Wrong. Let's talk about consent. Any type of research you're doing, consent is super important. You either need the consent of the participant or someone who's got the legal authority to make medical decisions for them, or just generally consent on their behalf. You can't get consent from the petrified, whether they're the people you're working with or their legal guardian. It's not like he had much of a choice, but this wouldn't fly at any modern journal. Next. Miyo Takano from Higurashi. Takano, I hate to break it to you. I know that you're doing this to get published, but your methods ensure that it never will be. F. Icchan from Angelic Layer. Icchan, the first major anime lab coat guy I encountered in my quest to devour every manga Borders carried in the early aughts. Go to your engineer tier of shame. Bondrewd from Made in Abyss. Do scientific journals even exist in Made in Abyss? Do you get peer-reviewed by other white whistles? Do you have to submit your manuscripts by balloon? Anyway, putting aside the countless deaths, never put aside the countless deaths, dude is working on a vulnerable population when a non-vulnerable population would suffice. F. Satomi Hakase from Negima. A lab coat does not a scientist make. Engineer tear of shame. Dr. Kanou from Tokyo Ghoul. Performing operations without the consent of the patient or the patient's designated medical decision maker. What's more, the benefit of these operations does not outweigh their risks. In fact, I'd argue that the risks vastly outweigh the benefits. Oh yeah, and a lot of people end up dead. F. Alright, next, Bulma from Dragon Ball. Bulma, get you a girl who can understand any tech placed in front of her. Engineer tear of shame. Next. Zoe Hange from Attack on Titan. Okay, this is a weird one. Look, Hange does her studies on Titans. Now, if we classify Titans as non-conscious animals who cannot provide informed consent to study, then maybe you can get somewhere with this. Sure, the studies put the Titans' health at risk, but understanding them is vitally important to the future of Paradise, so you could absolutely argue that the benefits outweigh the risks here. But there's a trick. Later in the series, we find out that Titans have human beings inside them that absolutely can regain their consciousness, making this human subjects research. Humans trapped in Titan form cannot provide informed consent, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Hanji never sought out anyone's relatives to obtain consent, even after she found out there were humans in there. Still, it's not like she was massacring Titans, as a part of her research program anyway. D. Next, literally the entire cast of Science fell in love. Your sample sizes are small and extremely biased, your research questions are vague, and you don't have a clear definition of your theoretical construct. B. Professor Oak from Pokemon. Having children do work for you without compensation is just generally sketchy, and those children didn't go through their city training. You just toss them a Pokedex and send them out into the world without ever teaching them anything about conducting ethical research. I bet you didn't even include them on your IRB submissions. For shame. C. Kisuke Urahara from Bleach. Okay, so I gotta confess that I dropped Bleach at the climax of the Soul Society arc, but I've done enough reading to know that this guy ain't getting published. Dude used human souls to create a medication. I'm pretty sure that human souls would count as a vulnerable population. You didn't kill anyone, but that's only because they're already dead. C. Frankenstein from Soul Eater. I don't think this man has ever sneezed in the direction of the scientific method or heard of a consent form. C. Kurisu Makise from Stein's Gate. One of the few people on this list that we actually know for a fact has been published. It seems like she got her degree in neuroscience, but she does primarily work with theories in physics, but that wouldn't stop her from publishing outside of maybe having trouble finding collaborators. Best I can tell is she's all theory. She could publish and apparently has been published, though I do have to wonder how she was able to publish in middle school. Like, what was her institutional affiliation? Can you use a middle school for that? Either way, A. Hakase from Nichijou, Nano's creator. Aw, so precious. Engineer tear shame. And our final anime scientist who comes to us via Twitter request, Joji Saiga from Psychopass. We don't really know what kind of research he did, but he was a professor of psychology, which means that he has his PhD, and he wouldn't have been able to land that job in a modern academic job market without a few publications under his belt. So, I guess, let's end this video on a high note. S? Whew. There you go. 16 anime scientists ranked. That's it for class today. For your homework, make sure to comment on or like this video if you'd like to see more silly videos like this. Take care, and I'll see you next class.